a dark art getting procurement through with the local authorities, but it's not. I think it's just about enlightening people. So welcome everybody to the OPDC Business Development Program on behalf of Brandywin. I'm Tony Morvale. I'm one of the organisers with Brandywin. We also have Nowza Manickshaw who's on the line. Today, what we wanted to do with this session is give you some insight into procurement, how it works in both the local authorities, and we have representatives from HS2 with Matt Hadlington. We have Manish Taylor from BBVS joint venture. I think that's right, isn't it, Manish? And we also have Carl Licorice, who is part of the CITB, and Nowza will be presenting, Nowza Manickshaw from Brandywin will be presenting on the programme and what we're doing next with that, which is about bid skills in the next couple of weeks on the 15th and 22nd of September. So to introduce us, we have Andrew Dakers, who, if you're not aware, is a CEO of West London Business and is part of the beating heart of the life of West London. So Andrew, over to you to start, and then I'll be here just to pick things up as we move along.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Tony, and a very warm welcome to everyone that's with us this morning. This is, of course, the first in a few webinars that the Brandywin team are delivering around this sort of area of demystifying procurement. And I suppose from a business community perspective, being able to access contracts in the public sector and beyond has always been critical in driving growth and sustaining our enterprises, large and small. But it is an area that, in the context of the pandemic and the particular stresses that the West London economy has found itself under over the past 18 months. I mean, we've experienced something like a 10% contraction in our economy that particularly comes into focus. And I suppose where I've been encouraged in the conversations and work that we've done over the past 12 months with our local authority partners is this emerging sort of train of thought around the concept of community wealth building, which I imagine some of our speakers may reference today, really putting a stronger emphasis than ever on the power of public spending by our local authorities and other partners in our West London backyard and the difference that can make. But of course, procurement in some regards has become more sophisticated and, dare I say, complex over recent years as ideas around both social value and the importance of community investment and responsible business practices have really come into focus. And as we're now, of course, in the run-up to the UK and Glasgow hosting the COP26 Global Climate Summit this autumn, environmental sustainability and the race to zero is also front and fore of so many of our minds, and again something that is now being woven very much into procurement processes, as I'm sure will come through in the reflections of our speakers this morning. So there is lots for West London SMEs to get their heads round as we look at the opportunities that are coming through to bid for, and to make sure that our businesses are fit to win these opportunities and make sure that our economy moves back into a sort of growth cycle. So wonderful to have you all with us this morning. We're going to hear for the first, I think, 20 minutes, or next 20 minutes, a local authority perspective. And we may be going, I think, to Abigail, first of all, from Ealing, and then to Andra from Hammersmith and Fulham Council. We're then going to hear, of course, from one of our mega developments in West London. We're going to hear from Matt, I think, HS2. And then from Carl from the CITB, giving us a sort of broader perspective. Should remind everyone, of course, that HS2 station in Old Oak is the largest railway station built in 100 years in the UK. So of huge strategic import and huge raft of supply chain opportunities coming through there. And then finally, we'll hear from Nazar on the next sort of bit of the Brand New and Business Support Programme, sort of unpicking what Fit to Bid is all about. And then we're going to wrap up with a panel discussion and Q&A. So lots to get through in the next hour or so. But first of all, let me hand over to Abigail from Ealing for the borough's perspective on the procurement opportunity. Abigail.
Hi, Andrew. Morning. I was told that we were attending today just to do kind of a collaborative kind of joint thinking session. So from Darren Sullivan. So currently for us, we are revising our procurement strategy and our economic growth strategy because we have a new leader within the council. Obviously, we are social value. It's very key for the new procurement strategy moving forward, especially in areas of, I would say, materials, so supply chains, how we work with small, medium enterprises and supply chains, so that helps economic growth within Ealing or across London, and working probably more collaboratively in social value policies with other councils, because I'm sure other councils are probably having the same issues. It's a policy, but then how do we benchmark that policy across other councils? How do we then, the problem I see is if we are asking bidders to provide us information, how is then that managed with, say, the prospective suppliers and ourselves to gain something out of it moving forward, so we can see an economic growth as such. So that's where we're at the moment. I'm not sure if Hammersmith are kind of going through the same thing or if they're more ahead. Not too sure.
We have Andrea in the call as well, Andrea from Hammersmith and Fulham.
Okay.
Fantastic. Well, we may well come back to Abigail shortly to sort of probe further on some of those themes and the challenges that you've flagged. But yeah, let's turn to Andrea now for a flavour of the Hammersmith and Fulham approach in this area.
Hi, everyone.
Morning.
So as Abigail said, there were some challenges, but the government actually did put forward a PPN, a procurement notice, to support local businesses prior to Brexit. Well, the PPN really came into force after Brexit. So we changed our contract standing orders to reflect the PPN and to encourage local businesses. So the way we currently procure, actually I can share my screen. So currently we changed the thresholds for procurement. So we are seeking 3 quotes for contracts up to 50K. These quotes, we encourage officers to seek from local companies, and where it's not possible, they need to specify why. If it's for works, we seek 3 quotes up to 50,000. However, we increase the value up to 189,000, and we seek 4 quotes from local businesses for work contracts. The PPN, as I mentioned before, so the PPN allows local authorities now to restrict the competition of tenders up to what used to be the OJU threshold to local businesses and SMEs and voluntary sectors. So we have that options. Before we weren't allowed to restrict based on location. Currently the PPN defines local businesses as Greater London. So West London businesses would be part of the local businesses for London. We are also changing the way we procure by establishing more dynamic purchasing systems to allow small companies to be able to bid. So we split the dynamic purchasing systems in multiple lots, depending on the value of the contracts that we're expecting to call off from that lot. So smaller companies have opportunities as well. And as Andrew mentioned before, of course, social value is, sorry, I'm not sure if everyone can hear me.
All good, all good.
Oh, okay. I heard a sound like it dropped. We did implement fully social value. So we apply social value at 10% of the value of the contract and 10% of the overall weighting in the award criteria for all contracts over 100,000. So we also help local businesses through the delivery of social value by big contractors, because any contract over 100,000 will commit 10% of that value to help the local community. And these are the latest changes in procurement in Hammersmith and Fulham. Obviously, everything over the former OJUT threshold stays the same because the regulations still apply. But yes, let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. That's really helpful overview. And I suppose a question for both you and also Abigail is to actually find the local contracts and the opportunities. What sort of platforms and portals are you using? How can you, as a small business, get sort of emails into your inbox flagging when there's an opportunity to go for locally?
Ealy's London Tender Portal, which then connect to contract finders. So when we generate the bid or upload, when you upload the notice, the London Tender Portal then generates a notification that goes to contract finder and all the applicable ones and statutory ones within the UK since we've come out of Brexit. So what suppliers or local suppliers need to do is to register to those portals. It's a free registration, and then they will be notified of every tender opportunity there is within the local authorities that they're searching for. I don't know if it's the same with Hammersmith. I'm assuming that it's more or less the same tools or kind of electronic procurement tools that we're using. I can't see that we're using any variants. I don't know, Andrew.
Andrew, what's the Hammersmith and Fulham story?
We're using Capital e-sourcing, so it's a similar system, but yes, it is an online platform. It is connected to Contracts Finder. For recurring contracts, you can check our transparency page because we publish all the contracts and you can see the expiry date. So if it's a contract that is likely to be reprocured, like statutory services, for example, those will always be reprocured. You can have an idea of when we will go to tender in advance based on the expiry date.
That was quite an echo we pulled off there. I wonder whether you could both share links in the chat window to those platforms for those that have joined us this morning, and the sort of contracts page that you mentioned, Andrea, that gives that sort of forward view on contracts that will be expiring. That sounded like a really interesting resource for local businesses to be perusing too, if you're able to again share that that hyperlink. I was also sort of intrigued by what you were saying around social value and clearly quite a strong emphasis on particularly with larger contracts, looking for that in the sort of weighting and scoring of bids around sort of 10% being focused on social value. To what extent are you also looking for that, and can that be a differentiator in some of the smaller contracts?
Well, our threshold is lower than the statutory requirement. It's 100,000. We just started using the social value portal, which helps us put a value against the social value that is being delivered. Because before, what we found, the most difficult thing was to be able to compare what suppliers are offering, because if someone is offering to plant 200 trees and someone is offering to give jobs to 10 unemployed residents, then how do we measure, how do we compare them? So we worked with the social value portal to develop a matrix, and so they are also working with the central government, and many local authorities are using them. They have an actual figure against each deliverable of social value. So for example, if you can offer a job for a local resident, then that would be worth around 35,000 for Hammersmith and Fulham. And these figures have been amended to match Hammersmith and Fulham only. So it's not the national figures. We worked based on how much our council tax is, how much our benefits rates are. So everything that is Hammersmith and Fulham only. And we upload the link to the social value portal in every tender over 100,000. But the implementation was a bit, it took around 6 months, because it's not only implementing it across the council, but it's also making suppliers understand what exactly we want from them, developing the guidance for commissioners and for suppliers. So we are looking to actually increase to 20% in the next 2 years, the percentage of social value. But what we've seen, especially around construction, a lot of the social value is being delivered through subcontracting to local businesses. And this is what we wanted to see. We wanted to be able to help local businesses in another way, even if they don't have the opportunity to bid for the contract or to win the contract, they still get the benefit of it.
Helpful clarification, and clearly a sort of amplification there of the emphasis that you're going to be putting on social value moving forward if you're sort of ratcheting up to 20% weighting. I mentioned in sort of my opening remarks COP26 and the sort of race to net zero. I know from all of our engagement with both Ealing and Hammersmith and Fulham that that is very front and fore of both local authorities' minds. Is the sort of carbon footprint of potential suppliers something that you're starting to look at more closely?
We already did in Hammersmith. So we have dedicated officers. We have a dedicated team who deals with carbon footprint. And we introduced climate implications for all the contracts. So governance-wise, you can see our key decision papers. But governance-wise, we need approval before we procure high-value contracts and when we award any contract. So all of them have implications for climate. And we also ask questions at selection questionnaire stage or during the tender. Obviously, climate is part of the social value piece as well, but we also have separate questions, climate oriented only. And those are being evaluated with. So before we go to market, we engage with the environment team for climate, and each officer decides what are the best questions to ask depending on the contract, because it's not something that fits all depending on the services that are being provided.
So for small businesses that might be looking at some of those smaller contract opportunities, would your advice be that, you know, getting a handle on your company's carbon footprint and starting to figure out how you're going to get to net zero is a good move in terms of improving your prospects? Okay. Yes. And I will take the opportunity to give a plug to a West London business programme, which is Better Futures, if any businesses on the call are looking for a helping hand in doing that carbon footprinting and planning your journey to net zero. Andrew, you want to come back in?
Also, I wanted to say that the Crown Commercial Services are currently organizing a group around climate implications and procurement. So I think there will be further development in terms of legislation, and it's good to get ahead of it before people are forced into applying it.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. Abigail, I don't know whether you want to come back in on any of these points, and perhaps particularly the net zero question. Is carbon footprint sort of being looked at more closely now by you and colleagues?
It is being looked at also from our colleagues on. It's a separate team from ourselves.
Okay, bye. Bye.
I'm not sure what happened there. It feels like we're crossing conversations. But I know that Darren's working on a piece to send across to you guys. So I'll get Darren to send everything across to you by the end of today with the links as well. So, but like I said, because we have a new leader, there's new visions. So at the moment, we're not, it's a draft policy. So I'm not sure how far I could kind of share that with you at the moment, but I'm sure within the next few sessions, we'll be able to share something with you.
Fantastic, thank you, Abigail. And given the sort of current sort of tenor of the political debate, I'm sure the emphasis is going to be ever more on all of this,
yes,
rather than less. Yeah.
So it's a good time actually that you guys have also set this up, because it also helps and allows us as well to factor things in to help suppliers as well. So it's good that we're having this early engagements as well.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And I suppose a reflection that I often hear back from our sort of business community is the more consistency of approach between local authorities, yes, the better, because trying to repackage social value and environmental commitments in different ways for different buyers can be very resource intensive, yes, for small businesses. Now, I hope you can both stay with us, because we are going to be taking sort of questions at the end, and that they may well start to trickle through, I hope, through the chat window over the next half hour. But for now, thank you both, and we're going to turn to, I think, Matt from HS2.
Morning, everybody. Thank you very much for having me today. Yeah, I am going to take you through a quick high-level overview of how HS2 approaches its procurement. From the point of view, I suppose, of the client, HS2. I also have with me here today my colleague Manish, who works for Balfour BT Vinci Sistra, who will be able to jump in on any of the more specific procurement questions if they come in. Let me just get started with these slides. Right, hopefully everybody can see that. Brilliant. Okay. Great. So yeah, my name is Matt Haddington. I'm a Senior Business Engagement Manager at HS2, and my role is really to work with organisations like West London Business and our contractors to try and involve local businesses in the project wherever we can. Involve could mean contracts, it could mean access to kind of knowledge and upskilling opportunities that come along with the project. It could mean exposure to some of our sites and expertise. It could mean a number of things as well as just contracts. I think that's kind of a key thing to get across early on. Just to give you a really quick update on where we are with the project, things are moving on at quite a pace now. We launched our first tunnel boring machine just near to the M25 earlier in the year. That's a really big milestone for us. That started now, and that won't stop until that tunnel under the Chilterns is completed. As you can see on phase 1, main construction works are well underway. Jobs numbers are rising all along the line of the route, and we expect some further announcements on those in the coming weeks. And we also have over 270 sites active. On 2A, we've now got the legislation in place to be able to deliver the line from kind of between Crewe and Birmingham, and some of those early procurements are starting to happen in that space. And on 2B, we're kind of preparing the bill to get the legislation in place to go up to Manchester, and we're waiting some updates from government on the eastern leg of the route. This will be a really quick fly through, because I think there'll be lots of value in conversation hopefully afterwards, so I won't kind of PowerPoint you all to death. Just to give you a quick understanding of how HS2 is delivered, and apologies if you know this, but I always think it's a useful thing just to reiterate. HS2 Limited is essentially the project management arm of government. It would be quite rare for SMEs or smaller local businesses to contract directly with HS2 Limited itself. We tend to let a small number of extremely high value contracts, which then filters down into the supply chain. So people like BBVS, we call our tier 1 joint ventures. They're our key delivery partners that will build the railway on our behalf. HS2 Limited tends to be a kind of contract management organisation. We do let contracts, but they aren't necessarily ones that would go out into the wider supply chain. The tier 1s will then have their own approach to delivering the project and the scope that they have to do for us, and they will bring in their own key delivery partners and access the wider supply chain, either through those delivery partners or directly. So most of the opportunities for the kind of wider supply chain will either come through our tier 1 joint ventures or their delivery partners. So in terms of those organizations, those companies that you could potentially be looking to kind of work with, this is where we're currently at in terms of our main works and stations contractors. I won't go through all of them just for the sake of time, and I've got a copy of these slides to share in the chat as soon as we finish. But the key one for you is in the middle on the bottom there, Balfour Beatty, Vinci Sistra, the joint venture who are delivering Old Oak Common Station, and also SCS, who are delivering the kind of main civil engineering works prior to the station's construction starting. Obviously wider across London, you've got Maestro Gardos, but those three on the bottom are possibly the ones that you'd be more interested in, I think. There are sort of various types of ways to get involved in the project, from large-scale framework contracts, which are all let through a tender portal called Compete For. All opportunities, we ask our contractors to list all opportunities associated to project on Compete For. If there's one message I wanted to kind of get across today, it would be to go and register there on that portal. There's a link to that at the end of this presentation. It's free resource, as well as kind of seeing live opportunities as they get added. It's also possible to kind of see who's won what where, if that makes sense, so you can get a feel for what the supply chain in your area is starting to look like and see where you might potentially get into it. As you kind of go down through the supply chain and the levels of complexity, there will also be opportunities for some shorter form contracts which have a slightly less rigorous requirements, I suppose. I think it's important to say that HS2 as a project, we're not in a race to the bottom on price. We use a balanced scorecard approach, which has an emphasis on quality. Social value seems to be something that you're interested in talking about today, so we can pick that up later. We have a slightly different approach to social value that I can cover. And then as we go down through the sort of levels of complexity, and we get to purchase orders, which will be for the sort of more regular informal requirements on site. And then the last thing that I wanted to just to highlight as a route into work on HS2 is that we're going to have a workforce of around 30,000 people. So it's not necessarily direct contracts that will provide opportunities. There are going to be hundreds and possibly thousands of businesses that benefit from having our workers kind of in town, and so there's a lot of opportunity there for you to provide them with all the things they would need to deliver their job. They're going to need places to stay, things to do, food to eat, laundry services, all of those kind of things, so that there are lots of informal opportunities that I don't think we should forget on the project. Here are just some examples, and again I won't go through them all, but these are sort of on the main civil side. These are the kinds of things that we'll be looking for over the coming years, and those are all again going to go through Compete For as the key sort of portal where those contracts will be listed to be accessed. What we're also starting to do on our website is to list where contracts have been awarded, and to tell you who those winners of those contracts are and to provide their contact details. So all of our tier 1 supplier information is on our website now, and we are starting to populate our tier 2 suppliers as well. So as we get that information, it appears kind of, I think it's updated every 2 weeks on our website. So you can see precisely who's won what where, where it's commercially acceptable, the value of that contract, a little bit about the scope, and then you can sort of again identify where your business might fit in. and contact those people directly to discuss opportunities. So we're trying to be as transparent and open as we possibly can with this project. In terms of some of the local things that I mentioned earlier, these are some of the things that you might not actually associate with a project of our size. There's a huge list of things that we will need alongside the traditional construction services and goods, creative services, food, accommodation, all the things that employees may need as they go about their day. I think it's just important to kind of remember that as well, because we're not just a tracks and trains organisation. There'll be an awful lot of other stuff going on that we need. And it's already actually starting to have some impacts in terms of local businesses and SMEs. We think the phase 1 of the project will generate around 400,000 supply chain opportunities. At the current time, about half of those are local to the route, so in counties adjoining the line of the new railway. And around 3/4 of those at present, in terms of our key critical contracts, are with SMEs. So we are actually delivering at the moment on some of those aspirations for the project, and there are real examples, some of which are on the right here, of businesses that are already benefiting. The guys in the top left corner there are one of my favourites. They're not actually in contract with HS2 or its suppliers at all. They run accommodation business just outside of Birmingham. They started with one house, and they spotted an opportunity in the market. They came down to our site on the hottest day of the year a couple of years ago with an ice cream van, handed out some ice creams and some promotional material for their business, and they now have around 50 properties, I think, and they have a waiting list of about 90 HS2 staff on it. They've built their business so quickly in 2 years, but one of the things they did was that they considered the values that we have as a company. They literally have some of our materials on the wall of their office. They are signed up to all of our community engagement materials, so they understand what work is happening where and when, the type of workers who are going to be in town. They put in place networking events for those workers across different contracts. They run laundry services direct for them. They've really thought about what our workers want, and they've made their product fit into those requirements, and it's a real success story. And they also employ apprentices, so they've looked at our values, they've looked at some of the things we want to achieve as a project, and they've tried to match their business to it, so that when they came to see our project managers, it was a very easy decision for a lot of those people managing the sites to say, oh wow, this is exactly the kind of business we want to work with. And it's been very beneficial for them, because I use their example now at most of the presentations I give, so they're also getting some kind of additional promotion out of it. And then there are other businesses on there that we don't probably have time to go through, but Concept Engineering have a base in Coventry and another one further north. They're an example of a business who bid for some work with us. They weren't quite at the required standard in terms of some of the things we were looking for. They went away and went through SCS's, one of our main works contractors, Supply Chain Academy, which helped them. It's a completely free program. They take about 150 businesses a year through, which upskilled them in some of the areas that they weren't proficient. I think one was FORS, vehicle management, another one was in the sort of health and safety space. And now they've got a contract with Balfour Beatty Vinci in the north part of the route for about £6 million, the biggest ever contract, doubled their workforce. There are examples of this kind of thing happening all over the route. And it's a case of kind of thinking about what your business does, looking at what we need, and then having a think about how those two things match together, and we will help you with that. So just before we get on into questions and conversations, one of the things I know you wanted to hear about was kind of where you can go to find out more. Compete For, as I mentioned, is the key place I would suggest that you go. You can go there to understand all of the contracts that are coming through, and to find out a little bit more about some of the contracts that have been let. The other thing is, towards the end of this year, we'll be delivering our Meet the Contractor event. I think it's going to be in November. You can go on our supply chain page and register for updates on that. The idea of this year's event is that day one will be access to our tier 1 suppliers, so the big contractors. But day 2, we will bring in some of those tier 2 suppliers who you may be more likely to contract with, and give you access to them for the whole day, and in some follow-up sessions as well. So you'll be able to have direct conversations with potential potential new contracts. The other thing you can do is you can tell me and my team about what you do. So if you go onto our webpage, hs2.org.uk/local-business, you will be able to tell us in a very simple form. It's not a kind of it's not a part of a formal tender process, just a little bit about what you do and where you are. We're keeping a track of those businesses. I think we're up to about 1,100 local businesses now who've told us about themselves, and we share that regularly with people like Manish, who's on the call, and with our tier 1 and tier 2 contractors, so that if they're thinking about some of those more informal opportunities, they have a list right in front of them that tells them that there's a local business that could potentially do that. And as the client, we ask them to think about that. We can't tell them where to spend their money, but what we can do is tell them that local business is important to us. And I'm just, hopefully the last box on the right there, you can see, and the camera's not in the way, but I would definitely urge you to visit that link, Supply Chain School. That's a completely free resource that HS2 and its contractors are signed up to. It allows you to go online and complete modules which include health and safety, EDI, and lots of the other kind of requirements that we look for, and also public sector contracts like some of the local authorities as well. And we kind of pay into that along with other members of the construction industry. And you can go and get recognised qualifications at no cost to you or your business, obviously apart from time, which will be recognised by people letting contracts on the project. It's completely free and we don't tell enough people about it, so please do go there and upskill your business wherever you think you might need to. And I realise that was a very, very quick walkthrough, but I'm conscious that there might be questions and want to bring Manish in as well to talk about more of the specific opportunities in the area. So if you've got any questions, now's the time.
We might ask you to stay with us for the panel.
Of course, yeah,
sort of
absolutely.
questions.
Happy to.
And perhaps we go straight to Manish now for his input. I can also see he's very helpfully shared a video on how to get the best out of your Compete 4 accounts. So
Brilliant.
That's clearly a link for everyone to save and watch later. But for now, over to Manish.
Yeah, unfortunately, you would have to listen to my dulcet tones on that video. So it was something I created in conjunction with Compete 4. They've approved it, so it's not a problem. I'm just reiterating everything that Matt says. I mean, there's lots of opportunities, lots of avenues to be involved. Yes, we completely understand that you may be involved further down the tiers, but there is definitely opportunities. And Matt, really good presentation, and I think one of the things that you said right at the very end around the supply chain sustainability school, it's definitely worth going on to. It's a free service. It's something that people like HS2, ourselves as contractors, we pay into it to give you a free service to upskill yourselves. And there is so many sort of resources available, whether it's quick learn videos or sort of pathway learning and those sort of things. So do spend some time. It's a completely free service. It does, when it comes to looking at tenders, we know that we put a question in around the amount of resources that a potential contractor has used on Compete for supply chain sustainability school, and we've actually got access to go in and check. So if someone has used 1,000 hours in a year, and that's really good because it means they've upskilled themselves and their staff, and it means that they're actually in the same mindset that we are, and we want to contract with like-minded companies, whether they're further tiers 2, 3, 4 down the line. It's fine. So yeah, so that, just reiterating everything that Matt says, and I've sent a couple of links as well.
Fantastic. I can see questions are trickling in, which we'll come back to shortly. So do keep posting any queries for Matt and Manish in the chat sort of stream. But for now, both of you, thank you very, very much. We are going to turn now and warmly welcome Carl Lickrish from the Construction Industry Training Board to give us a bit of a national perspective on the supply chain procurement opportunity. Carl.
Yeah, hi there, Andrew. Thank you very much for the invite. I'll give a CITB is a national organisation, just get that out there. But I do have a focus on London, and I work in what's called the customer engagement team. I'm a customer engagement manager in London. So for those who don't know, CITB, we're essentially the industry training board and sector skills council for the construction industry. So we're backed by government and industry, and we collect a levy from industry, and we distribute that out in grants, funding, other investments, and that's specifically targeted at skills and labour gaps. We have just thinking about London, we have 10 people in London, a field team in London, of which I'm part of, and who are directly providing support for London businesses in relation to skills and employment. So I think so when I come into these sessions, the audience varies. I think there's probably two types of people in the room, as well as the presenters. There's those that are registered with CITB already, and you'll know who you are, hopefully, and those who aren't. So if you are registered, then you can have access to CITB products and services now. We can sort of make some arrangements there. If you're not registered at the moment, the signing up is quite easy. You have to be. There are eligibility criteria. There is eligibility criteria there around construction needs to be the main focus of your business. There's a little bit more detail to that, but it's a fairly straightforward process. And we do. And then you'll be liable for, potentially, if you're a big enough company, liable for a levy payment. But just to put that in perspective, it's based on your salary expense. So if your salary expense is something like 200,000, we work that out on a percentage, and you'd be paying approximately £300–500 a year into that levy. And as I say, that levy is then pooled and then goes out in training grants and funding, which companies can easily recoup if they're engaged in the kind of ways that we've been talking about today. The clients want you to be engaged. So so just to get that in perspective. So at the end of this, obviously, there's going to be opportunities to get in touch with me or the team of advisors to either register, or if you're registered already, capitalise on some of those opportunities. So I think in relation to today's topic, there's CITB, and I think the reason why I'm speaking to the guys on the call here today is CITB really wants local employers to win more bids in their local areas. Simple as that. I know you guys do as well. So there's a couple of things that we can do to help that, and that I think one is to well, really, there's a couple of things we can help to make you more attractive to the clients and main contractors. And the two things, I think, one is to help you better engage with local communities and a diversity of candidates, and also do that in the ways that are favoured, which are work experience and apprenticeships mainly, amongst other things. And the second way is looking at your actual workforce. It's helping you to upskill them, make them multi-skilled, make them more productive. And I think crucially align them with future skills that are going to be needed that are coming up. I think we mentioned green skills earlier, that kind of area, or digital. So that's something to look at as well. So I think with going back to our advisors, they're on hand really to introduce you to various partners and various employment and skills portals that are out there. I'll go through some of those in a minute. And also they're also on hand to help you navigate through those various systems, identify funding pots, help you to navigate through those, whether they're government funding pots or CITB grants and funding that supports training and apprenticeships and jobs. So so that said, I just thought today would be good just to run you through sort of a little bit of the support that CITB can help with in some areas. So on apprenticeships, for example, we provide 8.5. If you were to take on a 2-year apprentice, we have a grant that gives you 8.5k, £8,500 as an incentive grant, and that's independent of what the government funds that come through. That's 8.5 for 2 years, and a little more for a 3-year. We also have this is quite new actually, a travel to train. So if your apprentice needs to travel quite a distance, we can cover 80% of the accommodation costs, and also we pay anything over £30 a week in travel expenses. We'll cover the costs there. There's quite a bit of money and investment and interest in apprenticeships from our side at the moment. It's a good time to get involved with that. We've also, so on the government side, and this is independent of CITB, we know there's a £3,000 incentive to take on a new apprentice. That's going to run out at the end of September. So if you're keen to get involved, now's the time. And again, going back to our advisors, they can help with, if you want to get involved with apprentices, you'd need to sign up to, or most of you would need to sign up to an apprenticeship service. It used to be called the DAS account. which is essentially a portal that helps you find providers, access funding, secure candidates, and then it allows you to set up an account to draw down that funding. It's a system, and with any system, they're never totally straightforward. So our advisors can help you kind of set up, get on those systems, and just try to make it easier for you to get involved with apprenticeships. On the other thing, the other sort of aspect or route, I suppose, to get involved locally with the communities and in line with what clients are asking for is work experience and work placements. You'll see that a lot as you bid. I think CITB, we're just beginning to get a little bit more involved in this area, but we've just put quite a lot of investment into an early careers portal called Talent View. It's in a beta stage or a soft launch at the moment, but you can access this. By the way, I'm going to share some links with you at the end. And it's a kind of, what I'd describe it as the cousin of the talent retention scheme, which was a pure jobs portal, which was brought out in response to COVID and backed by the Construction Leadership Council and others in industry. It's rather than it just being a jobs portal, this is to do with, as I say, early careers. So this is it'll advertise all apprenticeship opportunities for construction. So specifically for construction, it actually pulls through from the government websites, the apprenticeship website, and pulls through into Talent View. And it's also a place where work experiences and work placements can be advertised as well. So essentially what we're trying to do is just help better match employers, candidates, partners to come together to generate more and more experiences for people. So Talent View, as I say, advertise apprenticeships. Candidates can also upload CVs and post their profiles onto Talent View. And as I say, work placement opportunities. I think that, I can't see that at the moment in this soft launch, but that will come in future. The other thing we do in London is with registered employers, we've set up this pool, which is essentially a pool of employers that are interested in work experience, so that we know if a college or a partner or a school expresses an interest in working with the construction industry, we've got a list of employers who've said, yeah, we'd love to engage locally, and then our advisors can then get in touch with you more easily. So yeah, again, if you're a registered CITB employer in London, we can add you to that pool, and we can alert you to any opportunities that come about locally. We also work sort of, I suppose, on a higher level. We work with Build UK. For those who don't know, they're the umbrella fed for all of the majors and specialists, and the sort of the specialist federations as well. So we're working with them on some work experience guidance and toolkits. So that would help you if you do want to get involved with work experience. There'll be some additional support there to say, well, how do I go about this? How can I structure it? What should the content be? Are there any toolkits, any exercises, any videos? So there is lots of support out there now, and I can point you in that direction. We have a careers portal called Go Construct that I can add a link to and pass that through the distribution after this meeting as well. But there's plenty of support now and upcoming as supported, as I say, with our bigger partners nationally. The other thing we do, we make it our business to work with local partners. I know you'll have the Forge at Park Royal and other partners, and HS2 have all sorts of forums and federations and groups that can help as well. And we also just work nationally and in London with organisations that are maybe supported by the GLA. There's Lean, there's Construction Youth Trust. Volunteer It Yourself is a new organisation I've been in touch with who organise community builds. So that's kind of suits small businesses that can't take someone on for work experience on their site right now because of the various pressures and other reasons, but would actually go out and maybe visit some local candidates on a sort of off-site, if you like, on a community build and share their experiences and just have some kind of local connection. So if that's something that you'd like to get involved with, again, that I can facilitate that. So that's on the kind of I suppose on the local engagement side, trying to get involved with work experiences, apprenticeships, taking on local people, evidencing that social value that you can bring to the table. On the workforce development side, that's really our bread and butter. As I said earlier, we have a grant. So we have a grant that we can put out by using that levy money. We fund short courses. That's typically about £30 to £120 per short course. Might be, say, asbestos awareness, working at height, seeing some of the usual suspects there. We fund longer qualifications, so we fund MBQs, there's £600 available there. We fund even longer qualifications, so degrees, HND, BTEC. So for, say, something over 2 years, you'll get, say, over £4,000 for that in grant. And this is all independent from the government kind of educational funding routes that you might see coming through from DFE and others. Apprenticeships mentioned earlier, there's per year, there's £2,500 attendance grant. There's also a £3,500 completion grant. So there's plenty of plenty of funding in there. We've also set up a system, this is mainly for the short courses, where grant can be paid directly into your bank account through what we call the training model if you're using an approved provider. So we have 2,000 approved providers that we've said, yeah, you're a provider that we trust to deliver to the construction industry, and we've gone through a due diligence to pick out those providers. So there is a system, I won't go into the detail of the system now, but there is a system there that you can get involved with, which just you train with an what we call an ATO, an approved training organisation, and they put money into your account with the grants I've just mentioned there. The other, finally, the last opportunity for you funding wise is something called the Skills and Training Fund. That's for companies under 250 employees. This is purely construction companies who are in scope under our definition of construction, can claim between, or can apply for between 5,000 and 10,000, 5,000 and 25,000 per year on training and skills related courses. It won't cover things like consultancy, but it has to be training and skills related. It needs to be in construction, based on site-based activities. There's some leadership and management courses that can be funded as well. Payments can be upfront. In some cases, it depends on how new you are as how newly registered you are, and around a sort of credit record as well. We need to look at as well. But yeah, in some cases we can pay that money up front. But I think what that fund does, it's quite a simple application form, but you need to prove or evidence that the courses, that the training that you're investing in, or we're investing in if we fund it, and it is fully funded, are going to improve productivity for your business. Their value, you're using value for money and quality providers, and you can essentially describe the impact on that. What is quite a simple application form. It's not sort of bidding for funds. It's an application form for that pot of money. The other, if you're over 100, there is a distinction. If you're over 100 employees, or
30 seconds left, Carl.
Yeah, this is it. Great. If you're over 100 employees, or if it's not a CITB approved course, then that course must be new. So that's really it. I will share a slide. I don't know if we want to. I won't flash it up now, Andrew, but it's just a slide covering everything I've covered, with links to everything I've spoken about today. And obviously the offer's open for people to contact me anytime they want, and my details are on that slide.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Carl. Although I've seen your work closely over the years, I didn't realise there were that many opportunities for our SMEs to be sort of looking through and trying to tap into. So I'm sure that summary slide will be really useful for us to be able to circulate with the other resources and follow up to today. Without further ado, our last contribution today, we're going to go sort of full circle back to the Brandywin team and Nazor to give us a bit of an overview of Fit to Bid and some of the sort of sessions that are in store over the coming weeks for those that want to do a deeper dive, and then we'll sort of wrap up with a few questions to our panel, and I know that some of those questions have been flowing in through the chat over the past half hour, so we'll pick some of those out. But over to you, Nazor.
Thank you, Andrew. Good morning, everybody, and many thanks for attending. This is Nazar Manekshaw. I'm the MD of the company, and we are extremely proud to be working with all these famous brands here, but in particular with West London Business and Andrew and his team, who are great and very supportive partners. So what I'm going to do, I've got 3 or 4 slides, and we will quickly try and finish by 11 o'clock. So hopefully try and keep to the agenda. Our supply chain program is comprised of 5 elements. Engage with procurement, that's what we're here today. We've got online bid capability questionnaire, which I'll talk to you about in a few minutes, and a few bid skills sessions as well. We've got also something called sales enablement, which is part of the wider program, and we also offer one-to-one tender business advice sessions. Hopefully that will help you to lift off and win a few new contracts. Okay. That's the schedule. We were engaged with OPDC way back in February. Then we had Purda with the elections, etc. So we actually got started in late May, early June, and we've now delivered 5 sessions. We were contracted to deliver 12. We've scheduled 14, which is extra value, social value, you can call it that. And what I want to talk about are the two forthcoming sessions on the 15th and the 22nd. There's lots of other good work to be done, and we will be in touch with you with joining links and further information. So the bid capability questionnaire, we developed this 2 years ago. It's a sector specific, so we've done work with Brent Council on the adult social care sector, with Hillingdon on the construction sector, and with Park Royal, where we're doing it across. With Hounslow as well, we did some work, over the summer, and that was specifically to do with council procurement. So we're going to send this out to our entire caseload across the Park Royal area, and we will develop an individual report to everyone who responds. So there's no limit to the responses. So we've got that into the budget. We've got people basically, geared up. We've got a template, and it goes to, and it's an individual sort of a customized report, which then feeds into the one-on-one sessions with Tony and his team. And Tony, if you want to come in a few minutes, please, a minute or so on the sessions, please.
Sure. So yes, so in terms of the one-to-one advice sessions, we've been meeting with the local businesses based in Park Royal and looking at, how are they recovering from the COVID lockdowns and emerging into a new world of growth, and talking also to a lot of adult social care providers who are looking at ways to bid for additional contracts through the local authorities in Brent, Hammersmith and Fulham and Ealing. And there's also an opportunity just to get some free one-to-one advice if you want some very specific things. For example, you might want to look at marketing, you might want to look at financial analysis. So there are opportunities there with the Brandon team to provide you with a broader range of insights into where you are with your business and how to take off and move forward. Thanks, Nauza.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Right. So the next two sessions, Wednesday the 15th, and sorry, it's the wrong date, it's 22nd of September. I'll correct that before we send it out. It's these are two sessions. These are gold dust. If you want to bid, if you want to get a bid ready, then I would urge every business on this workshop and around the Park Royal area to attend these two sessions. Okay, they are delivered by Neil Bassol, who's an expert, an acknowledged expert. He runs his own bid trading organization, and he's been associated with us for the last 8-10 years. And these are absolutely sellout ones. So hopefully, when you receive the invitation to join, I hope you'll be able to take it up, which will hopefully come to you by the end of today or tomorrow. The one-on-one sessions, Tony's covered them in some detail. Just to add, they are all captured on an action card, which is available to you as well as the business. That's for future reference and will be sent to OPDC, the sponsors as well. So our program basically, our delivery is comprised of workshops or webinars in this case. Everybody's welcome, from startups to micros to self-employed to early stage or to established. We have two diagnostics. One is one we call Goal Mapper, which is a broader one, and then the Fit to Bid one, which will be coming to you by the end of today and tomorrow as well, and followed up by the one-on-one sessions. Hopefully, within this program, the key objective of the program is Park Royal is business regeneration, reboot, recover, and grow. And we've got an element of bid skills, which will help you to win a few new contracts. So that's my last slide. I would urge you to attend the next two sessions. Links for the Fit to Bid questionnaires and the two sessions are going out by this evening or tomorrow morning, along with the recording of this webinar. So on that note, I'll hand back to you, Andrew. Many thanks.
Thank you, Nazar. It is a packed program, but as you say, some fantastic experts that you're sort of pulling in there to help small businesses sort of build up capacity, ready to bid for the opportunities that we've been hearing about this morning. Now, time isn't on our side. I'm sure that lots of folk may be at a point where they need to head off to other meetings, but we do have a small window of time now for a few questions back to our panel. I'm going to start with one that's sort of come in from Monica Stoneman, that I think probably best directed at Matt. And Monica asks whether there are basic approvals that any contractor needs to work with HS2 and the supply chain. They're an alarms installer, from intruder to fire to door entry systems. Matt.
Yeah, so the depending on the contract, there'll be a sort of a sliding scale. I think the idea is that we don't want to preclude businesses from being able to get involved, but we have an aspiration as a project to try and raise the bar in terms of the quality of some of the provisions. So in terms of a specific answer for that exact business and section, I'm not across that, so I'd have to be completely honest. And it would sit with our contractors. But generally speaking, as a client, what we're looking to do, and Manish has jumped on, which I'm sure will be helpful, is to put an appropriate level of requirement in for the contract value or risk or nature of the work. But sorry, Manish, I'm sure you've got some better detail than that.
You may be on mute, Manish.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Great.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so from our perspective, we would always sort of, particularly where we're talking about the values of projects that we're talking about, we would expect you to have some sort of third-party assurance, and whether you use something like construction line common assessment, builder's profile, that's kind of where we would start. But we would also expect you to have your particular discipline. So you would have to have the I think you said it was the NSI accreditation. So that's kind of where we would expect. But as you go further down the supply chain, Matt said we don't want to preclude people, and there is a lighter touch for all of those that people can actually apply for. So it's worthwhile investigating and just double checking in fairness.
Thank you, Manish. We also had a query that came in, I think, from Chris around sort of B2B fleet procurement services, and whether fleet management is being sort of outsourced by businesses in the HS2 supply chain. Any reflections there?
So the type of contract that we're on, we're actually on old common management contract. So we're not actually delivering anything directly ourselves. It's all through our supply chain. The best thing to do will be to look at the HS2 website on their indirect contracts, and I think I stuck a link in the actual chat, is to have a look on there, and you can see the awards, which contractors we've awarded, the works have been awarded to, and then they should all have a contact details on there. So it's probably best to contact them individually to see what their requirements are. We can't dictate their requirements around things like their fleet.
Just to jump on that, what we can do as a client is understand a bit more about the offer of the area. So I'll put the link into our local business register. So do go in there and tell us what you do, and we'll make sure that we pass that information on. Providing a kind of a ready-made resource just makes it more likely that those contractors that Manish is talking about will be able to access your businesses.
Yeah, and Matt does actually share that with us regularly, and we share that with our key supply chain regularly as well.
Now, Nation HC, who I see have got a question that might be more directed towards local authority partners who've unfortunately had to slip away. I'm wondering whether you can just expand a bit, Nation HC, and the chat window around your healthcare sort of services, and then I'm sure a member of our team may be able to pick up off the back of today and help you sort of match you back into the local authorities if indeed that is the best fit. I'm going to cut across to Carl just to invite you to expand a bit on the work experience piece that you mentioned, because as you say, that features a lot in procurement and sort of social, building a sort of social value sort of offer, but it can be quite difficult to deliver work experience on construction sites. So any help there from CITB in navigating work experience in construction?
Yeah, I think, as I said, I think there's a number of ways it can be approached. I think what we saw a lot over the summer and through sort of post pandemic was were virtual experiences. So, as I mentioned Lean earlier, they had a package which was a half-day package where an employer could essentially beam in to a school classroom and give them that kind of experience of what it's like to work in the industry, with really the sort of objective to inspire the local community to be involved and dispel myths, etc., etc. The other one, I'm thinking specifically about small businesses where it's just difficult at the moment, just to do the work, let alone kind of look after someone on site. As I mentioned earlier, this volunteer it yourself organisation, I think that's definitely one worth looking into. And then, as I say, I did mention Talent View, so that there is an opportunity to advertise opportunities on there, so to get involved and meet with schools and colleges, and that whole matching process will go on there. But it is in a soft launch at the moment, so it is one to look out for. There is going to be a main launch this month, but I have to say, I've looked at it, I can't see a lot happening on the work experience side yet, although there's a box that says work experience opportunities. It's at that kind of stage, to be totally honest, but that will develop over time, and that's heavily backed by all the leading players in the industry.
And as pandemic pressures ease, presumably work experience on site of some sort may start to come into play, because I imagine it's very difficult for someone to make that leap to say, I want to be a construction apprentice and commit the next three years of my life to construction, without having had some sort of flavour of the real world of on site. So is there guidance for employers available that want to give that initial sort of on-site taster?
Yeah, I think overall, and that's the key, the taster as well. But overall, people do want to get back face to face. They do want to give people an experience on site, and they just want to be able to manage it. So, as I said, there will be more guidance. We're working with Build UK to provide more guidance there, toolkits, etc., to give people I suppose it's to give supervisors on site more than anything, the idea of how they can actually manage someone on site. We do work with, I'm speaking with HS2, people like Elliot there. Try to sort of work through how we can support your work experience programs. It's quite easy for the bigger, not easier, but it's easier for the bigger firms. So you talk about the tier 1 providers; they've kind of got a bit of a setup already, and they can bring people in. Much more difficult for the smaller providers. So we are conscious of that and try to bring in more support where we can to enable work experiences. There's things like other ways that people can get involved. There are things like traineeships that we're backing, so which will include qualifications for people, but some work experiences. There'll be T-levels coming up that are coming up around the corner. So there's a big push from government, not least government, and then with our backing, we'll help people to connect with those opportunities and those channels to work experience, get involved with the work experience.
Fantastic. Matt, you mentioned the HS2 supply chain event that's sort of coming up in the autumn. Whereabouts does that happen? And you said the second day was going to be focused on accessing tier 2 suppliers. Would you expect those tier 2s to come with some live opportunities that they can talk to tier 3s about?
Yeah, definitely. So, we're following on from the success of last year, so it'll be an online event. That just means more people can get in through the door, frankly. And it's the plans are being finalised, but the expectation is that people like Manish will kind of put forward some of their tier 2 suppliers to come along and talk about their scope for the next kind of year or so. And yeah, they will be coming along with some I imagine will be live opportunities, and some will be a kind of pipeline, a look at the pipeline going into the future. But yeah, it'll be, I think there's 2 programmed. One is for main works civils and one is for stations. I think the stations event is probably early into next year. Is that right, Manish? I think is what they're currently talking about, and the civils is before that in November, I think.
Yeah, no, they're both are in November.
Oh, are they both in November? That's great.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, both stations are early November, and main works contractors are late November.
Great.
So online November, and we should go to the page that you've flagged, Matt, to register for updates.
Yeah, on the supply chain pages. Yeah, but we'll make sure we get invitations out. In fact, I think organisations like West London Business, Andrew, might be getting a kind of hold the date card next week, hopefully. So you should get that through from us.
So we'll help disseminate that and get
Yeah.
that into everyone's diaries. Zenat's asked a question that may be a little bit out of the scope of today's discussion, but valid nonetheless, of whether there is support available to help SMEs acquire shared or community buildings, given that some of the challenges of a large rents. I'm conscious in Park Royal that challenge is particularly acute. What I'd suggest, Zenat, is that you pick up with the Branduin team as well as West London Business and Park Royal Business Group by email, and we can help you explore some of the options for accessing sort of shared spaces where they exist. So very happy to pick up with you offline on that. And finally, a question we've had come in from some suppliers of metal fabricated engineering goods, asking that sort of critical question of what is the first step to get started. Now, the Branduin team, I'm sure, will say attend the next 2 workshops. So I'm not going to turn back to Nazor for a further plug there. But I just wonder, sort of Manish, what would be your sort of reflection on that first step to get started?
So I think there's a number of things. Some of the things that Matt said is really get on to Compete For, because we are contractually obliged to put all of our adverts on Compete For. That contractual obligation is passed down the supply chain. So our supply chain tier 1s, tier 2s will need to also do exactly the same. So it's written within our contract. So that's the first and foremost. I have stuck the supply chain email address specifically for Old Oak Common to get involved. Also, the local businesses that Matt has put the email address of, as put your name on that as well. It gets disseminated, it gets put out. So it's like everything. You've got to put the work in, and then you'll get the benefits out. So it's initially, it may feel like a little bit of a slog, but if you continue, this is we're not going to hand this project over until 2029. That's there or thereabouts. So there's still plenty of opportunities. So there's plenty of opportunities for people to be working on the whole route of HS2, in fairness, not just at Old Oak Common, but we'll be there for quite some time. So just keep plugging away, and as I said, our supply chain team will send you some of our previous webinar videos and stuff like that, so you can have a look at what the project's about and how you can get involved and at what level. So yeah, that's probably the best way right now.
Thank you so much, Manish, and indeed thank you to all of our panel this morning. It's been fantastic to get a diversity of perspectives. First of all, from our local authority partners, Andrea from Hammersmith and Fulham, Abigail from Ealing Council, Matt from HS2, as well as Manish, Carl from the Construction Industry Training Board, and of course Nazor and Tony from Branduin. I'm going to pass back now to, I'm not sure, either Tony or Nazor, just to remind you as we close of the dates of those forthcoming webinars. So back to the Branduin team. Thank you all.
That's great. Thanks very much, Andrew, and thanks very much to all of our panelists for attending, and thanks to those of you who turned up today and passing your questions. Yes, so we have 2 seminars coming up, as Nelsa said, on the 15th and 22nd of September, which is the Bid Skills from Neil Besson at Bid Perfect, and they are great seminars for learning about the best way to approach and the golden rules for bidding for additional work. In October, we're focusing on skills along with supply chain opportunities, and November will be more about employment skills. And this is all being done through the generous sponsorship of the OPDC and the new Employment and Skills Hub at the Forge. So Billy Sego's running that project as well. So lots of opportunity there. We'll obviously get the information from Carl and from Matt and Manish about the differing portals and slide shows and things like this. So we'll make sure that gets sent out to everybody who's attended the call, along with other participants. And yeah, just once again, thanks Andrew very much for hosting this and for contributing your time to the event as well. It's been very successful. We've had a really good turnout, so quite a pleasing participation from the attendees as well. So that's it from us. Now, is there anything you want to add?
No, I'm good. And many thanks to you all, and thank you, Andrew, for hosting. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Have a great day, everyone. Take care.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
Andrew. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.